Bright Duty. Every student matters.
Hello students, today we are going to study the chapter Challenges of Nation Building, which is the first chapter of your political science. Now in this chapter what we are going to study? Three challenges which India faced: need for unity, democracy and development. Legacy of partnership, difficulties and problems faced in the process of partition of India, displacement and resettlement of refugees, the Kashmir problem, organization and reorganization of states, Pondicherry's merger with India, Goa's liberation and its integration into India, political conflict over language, why should we have smaller linguistic states? Now let's start with the introduction. British took a great pride in the fact that they brought about political unification of India. But the partition of India in 1947 could not be averted. The new Viceroy, Lord Mountbatten, was convinced that the transfer of power to Indians could only be on basis of partition. And the Indian Independence Bill was passed by the British Parliament, provided for the creation of two independent dominions from 15th August 1947 to be known as India and Pakistan. Now let's start the story of Indian independence. As you could see in the headlines of the newspaper, the Hindustan Times, India independent, British rule ends and Constituent Assembly takes over. Mountbatten's appointment as Governor General, enrosed, colorful ceremony marks birth of nation. This is the midnight of 14th and 15th August, and it was a very painful experience for India to be divided into two countries. Like how you would feel when one home will be divided among two brothers. Same feeling people had because they did not even know whether they were in Pakistan or in India. Now, Tryst with Destiny was the first famous speech by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, and it was the Special Assembly of Constituent and the noble goals before Indian nation in a difficult situation. And before we start the partition of India, India had to face three major challenges which were faced by the independent. As you all know, we are a populous country. And we had to face so many things, so many experiences, because India was building a very new nation. The nation which was earlier was divided into two. Now let's see what were these three major challenges. The first one was diversity and partition were the main obstacles, opposition from regional groups. And this is very true. Like diversity and partition were the main obstacles means the people who were living in India were from different religions. They were speaking different languages. They were from different cultures. They were from different states. And many people from regions, that means the kings or the nawabs or those who were the rulers of the different regions, they were in the opposition. So it was a difficult task for us. And above all, the country was dividing into two parts, that was India and Pakistan. So this diversity and partition were also the main obstacle. Then second thing was the establishment of democracy, a very, very big problem. That was challenge was to develop democratic practices in accordance with the constitution. People were not even literate. We did not know what exactly democracy is. So it was a big task for our government to spread this democracy, then to strengthen it, and second thing was to deepen it because people did not even know what exactly the problem of democracy or what the thing was because they were in a habit of living under the British rule. Now, when they were free of like they were free at that time they came to know like something like democracy is going to spread in India, so everyone was not in favor of that. They didn't even know what democracy is. Democracy means they had to choose their own government, they had their own choices. But yes, in urban areas it was at least clear to all, but what about the rural areas? Because people were not even literate, people were not mature enough to understand what exactly the democracy was. So establishment of democracy was the second challenge of building the new nation. Third one, the development and well-being of entire society, effective policy for the economic growth, eradicate poverty. Development and well-being of entire society means effective policy for economic growth and eradicate poverty. Do you think is it possible in the country like India? We are the most populous country, and effective policies for economic growth means giving them education and employment That means people should have like work, people should have skills to work. So these policies were made by the government, and they wanted to just remove poverty from India, but still it is a big problem in the country like India. See, you could see in the pictures as well, people are without the basic amenities, like they don't even have food, shelter, clothing, education. Government has started so many policies for these people, but still we are struggling with all these problems till date. But yes, of course, better than before, which were happening in the 1940s. This is the first picture where the Honorable First Prime Minister of India, Mr. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, addressed the nation. See, our tricolor flag was here and it was flooding in an independent country. Most disheartening time, partition of India and Pakistan. It is very, very disheartening. It was a mental trauma, emotional trauma for the people of the country just because of few political conflicts. The country was divided. Now we see there are some causes and effects of partition of India. Let's talk about the long term causes. Muslim conquest of northern India in 1100 and British imperialism in India. Nationalists organized the Indian National Congress in 1885. Muslim nationalists from separate Muslim League in 19. These were the long term causes just because of which the India was parted. Few short-term causes were also there, like World War II weakens European colonial empires, pressure from Indian nationalism increases, then insistence of Muhammad Ali Jinnah and the Muslim League that Muslims have their own state because they wanted to separate from India just because they wanted a Muslim Republic country. Then writing between Hindus and Muslims throughout northern India, that means they had conflicts and they just had a communal rights. So what were the effects? Violence erupted as millions of Hindus and Muslims crossed the border between India and Pakistan. Then Gandhiji's assassination was also a big issue for this. Then India and Pakistan became centers of Cold War rivalry, then establishment of the state of Bangladesh. Now these things are connected till date, till today. What are those connections? Continuing clash between India and Pakistan over Kashmir. Nuclear arm races as both India and Pakistan refused to sign non-proliferation treaty. Now let's see what difficulties were continued, like legacy of partition, difficulties and problems faced in the process of partition of India, which was literally, I could tell you, it was like a big mental and emotional crisis of each citizen of our country. Now let's start the story from Lord Mountbatten. He assumed office as Viceroy of India on 24th March 1947. On 3rd June, he announced his plan of partition of India. The Indian Independence Bill passed by the British Parliament received the royal assent on July 18, 1947, and two independent dominions known as India and Pakistan came into being from the 15th day of August 1947. The British monarch seized the moment of each emperor of India. So what was his plan? Lord Mountbatten presented a plan on 3rd June 1947 that it offered a key to political and constitutional deadlock created by the refusal of Muslim League to join the Constitutional. Then Mountbatten's formula was to divide India but retain maximum unity. It was divide and rule exactly. The country would be partitioned, but so would be Punjab and Bengal. So the limited Pakistan that emerged would both Congress and the League's position to some extent. The ceremony of the transfers were held on 14th August 1947 in Karachi and 15th August 1947 in the most unfortunate day. It was fortunate because we were out of British rule, but it was unfortunate because the country was divided into two parts. A big country which was divided into two. And two self-governing countries legally came into existence at the stroke of midnight on 15th August 1907. And this plan has some main points. Six Hindu Muslims in Punjab and Bengal legislative assemblies would meet and vote for partition, and a simple majority of either group wanted partition, then these provinces would be divided. Sindh was to take its own decision. India would be independent by 15th August 1947. The separate independence of Bengal was ruled out. A boundary commission to be set up in case of partition. Now, Now, what were the consequences, the results, and the problem faced in the process of partition? Are as follows. First of all, the communal rights and a massive influx of refugees from across the world. The point was not merely a division of a country. And it was a division of, you could say, the emotions. It was a mental trauma. It was emotional crisis. The people were stuck at one point, like what was going to be happen to their homes, to their employment, to their livelihoods, to their relations. Like people were well settled. See how difficult it is when we are told to leave the place where you are residing for so many years, as your forefathers must have managed everything for you. And in the meantime, you came to know like you are not in India or you are not in Pakistan and you have to leave that place. So it was not merely a division of country, it was a division of hearts as well. And lakhs of people were forced to leave their homes and migrate across the new borders, and the sufferings of migrants, men, women, and children could be best recognized only by those who themselves suffered violence and had to stay in refugee camps. Two nations. Advanced by Muslim League leader Muhammad Ali Jinnah, India consisted of two people, Hindus and Muslims, and Muslims demanded separate country. Now, Congress opposed the theory, and political competition between Congress and Muslim League and British rule led to the creation of Pakistan, as I have told you. Lord Mountbatten was one of the, we can say, foundation person for this partition. Process of partition was very painful and difficult. Muslim majority areas would make up Pakistan and rest of the area with India. It was decided in Lord Mountbatten's plan. Now let us continue the legacy of partition. Like there were few difficulties and problems also faced in the process of partition of India. Now there was no single belt of Muslim majority areas in British India. Two areas of Muslim concentration in British India, one in east and another in west. So Pakistan had an East Pakistan and a West Pakistan, which was also a problematic. Like there was no majority belt, if we say, because the Punjab and Bengal were the two majority provinces where they could have one Muslim majority area. So later Punjab and Bengal were bifurcated, and half of the Punjab was gone to Pakistan and Bengal was changed into East Pakistan. Now the question of northwest frontier provinces. Now what was that? That was like not all Muslims majority areas wanted to be in Pakistan. And there was one famous personality, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, leader of northwestern frontier provinces, was against partition. And he was also known as Frontier Khan. And he was born on 6th of February 1890 and till 20 January 1988 he was alive. His voice was ignored, and he was leading northwestern frontier province and they did not want partition, but his voice was ignored and he was merged with Pakistan. He literally did not want to do the partition of India and Pakistan because he was the one with whom so many people, that means Muslim majority areas, they wanted to be in India. Now there was a problem of the princely states. There was also a problem related to India. States which occupied some two-fifths of the area of India, the princely states were allowed to join either India or Pakistan or remain independent if they so liked. The matter was complicated by the political advisor to the Viceroy, Sir Corfield, who began advising the princes to declare their independence, and conditions could hardly be worse. The next point was administrative and financial difficulties because they were finding difficulties each and every field. So India's economic and administrative system and her transport and postal system had been established on the basis of United India. The disintegration of the railways, the army, the postal and the telegraph system gravely injured and both parts of India. Now administrative and financial difficulties. Now see, India's economic and administrative system and her transportation and postal system had been established on the basis of a united nation, India. And the disintegration of the railways, the army, the postal, and the telegraph system gravely injured both parts of it. Pakistan was comprised of some 40% of cotton growing, 85% of the jute growing, and 40% of wheat growing areas where most mills and factories which use these materials were situated in India. And that is the reason why the first year plan accorded the highest priority to agriculture and irrigation projects in India. Now, there were few problems for the minorities too, like both ways. If we talk about Hindus and Sikhs, they were called minorities in Pakistan. If we talk about Muslim people, they were called minorities in India. So lakhs of Hindus and Sikhs in Pakistan, large number of Muslims in India became undesirable aliens in their own home because they didn't even know whether they were residing in, like if we say they were residing in Pakistan or India. So they were not even confirmed because many people don't even didn't even know that the country was divided. Now, the size of the minorities both in Pakistan and India was to remain very considerable. Earlier, it was told that in Pakistan, the minority communities will be treated as Muslims, but Pakistan's constitution designated the country as Islamic Republic Pakistan. And the Hindus and other minorities in Pakistan continue to be treated as second rate citizens. But here, I clear you, in India, it is not like that. Displacement and resettlement of refugees, partition of India, and creation of Pakistan was because of three main factors. Muslim League's two nation theory, that is, Hindus and Muslims constituted two distinct nations. Communal rights that had been taken a serious turn as a result of the direct action of the Muslim League, and the British policy of divide and rule, which widened the gap between the two communities, Muslims and Hindus. Otherwise, there was no use. There was no requirement of partitioning the country because communities did not want. It was just and mutually they did not want, but it was under the policy of divide and rule by the British. Now let's see the tragic consequences of this partition. You could see it is very clear from the picture. Can you see? The people are overloaded on this train because it was a tragic transfer of the population, about 80 lakhs. 80 lakhs. My God. See, 80 lakhs is a very, very huge amount of people, those who transferred from India to Pakistan. Killings and atrocities, 5 to 10 lakhs were killed. These were the scenes of riots. People were fighting with each other. Communal zone in major cities and miseries in refugee camps. People were not getting even their basic amenities. Though the the government was trying to provide all the things, but as both sides, both ways, huge population, large amount of people, and they were not ample amenities to provide all these. Women were abducted and raped. Yes, it was injustice for the people also. Both ways. In both the countries, like minorities and especially the women, they were abused. They were raped, they were abused, they were assaulted, and there was a forceful conversion of their religions and forceful marriages occurred at that time. Honor killings, children were separated from the parents. See how painful it is. I mean, separation of a country was separation of people from their relations, from their emotions, from their livelihood. That means it was disheartening everywhere. Now, what was Mahatma Gandhi's sacrifice? On the 15th August 1947, Mahatma Gandhi did not participate in any independence celebration because he was not happy with this party. And he was in Kolkata in the areas which were torn by gruesome riots between Hindus and Muslims. He was saddened by the communal violence because he was always against violence and disheartened that the principles of ahimsa, that is non-violence, and satyagraha, active non-violent resistance that he had lived and worked for, had failed to bind the people in troubled times. Gandhiji went on to persuade the Hindus and Muslims to give up violence. His presence in Kolkata greatly improved the situation, and the coming of independence was celebrated in spirit of communal harmony with joyous dancing in the street. Gandhiji's prayer meetings attracted large crowds, but this was short-lived as riots between Hindus and Muslims erupted once again, and Gandhiji had to resort to a fast to bring peace. Now, there were measures also taken to rehabilitate the refugees. The government of India, the charitable institutions, and other voluntary bodies took many measures to rehabilitate the displaced people. Those migrating to India could find shelter in temples, gurdwaras, and dharamshalas, and that was too temporarily. The schools remained closed for some time to provide shelter to the refugees. The voluntary body supplied them food and other necessary things until they could fend for themselves. The government provided that displaced person with suitable jobs. It was employment because so that at least people should start their livelihood. The availability of cheap long-term credit helped small businessmen. So loans were also provided. Lakhs of Muslims from East Punjab, UP, and Delhi had migrated to Pakistan. Their properties were allotted to Hindus and Sikhs who had left West Punjab and Sindh, leaving their houses locked there. The government of India had to contact the government of Pakistan so that the two governments could have an idea of the value of houses and shops of the displaced person for purposes of exchange of property. The army, the police, the administrator, and the non-government organizations made massive efforts to trying to restore the calm. Peace was required, but do you think everyone who has left his or her place, who has left the house, who has left the livelihood, could have easily managed here? And finally, rehabilitation of the Punjab refugees could happen through the heroic efforts made by the refugees themselves. They automatically ceased to be called refugees and were named Purusarthis, that means men of energy and ambition.